trying to be very informative about this German meal. It's very easy. And not everybody likes it, of course. Some people think cabbage is just terrible, and I just love it. My name is Collyn Franzenberg Schmidt. You can tell that's a good German name. My dad was born and raised in Germany. I think he came to this country, well, he came through Ellis Island in 1924, or before 1924. That's when people stopped. Oh, it was way before that. My dad was German, from Germany. And he, my mother learned to cook the way Dad wanted it. That's the way women did in those days. And I think some of them still do. We were raised, my parents were on a farm for a while in north central Iowa. And two of my sisters were born there. Another sister was born in southern Minnesota. And then they moved to Pearson, Iowa, which is right near Sioux City, and that's where I was born. But, so we would have things, a lot of cabbage and turnips and root vegetables, beets, carrots. And we always had a big garden, so our food came from the garden and from the butcher shop. We lived in Pearson. There was a family that lived down the street from us, and that daughter, Mona Vogt, her name was probably my best friend. Hello? Mona, oh, when I think about her, I don't want to. Well, they were a good family. Her father had tuberculosis, and that was big because he was gone. Mona and I we did some things we shouldn't have done. Had little clubs, and then we would decide these awful things we were going to do. And my mother, or Mrs. Vogt, actually found this list of things we were going to do, and so she stopped it in a hurry. I'm not. I have somebody coming here for lunch. What day should we do it? How about Thursday? The band concert I think they were on Saturday nights, and we would go downtown and walk around the town. And that's what I did probably with Mona there. And we'd maybe have a nickel to spend, but never anymore. A nickel was big. Once I was downtown and I found a $1 bill, and I went running home with it. It was huge to have a $1 bill. Then my mother and Dad let me buy a quart of ice cream for 50 cents. I remember that, and we all shared it. And that was luxurious because we didn't have much. So what we did have, we treasured. It was important to us. We never felt like we were in the Depression. We never knew we were hard up. We lived in Conrad, Iowa. We moved there when I was going into 6th grade. And my uncle was there, and he wanted my dad to go in business with him. And everybody was just kind of coming out of the Depression in those days. So Conrad was quite a prosperous, very small town of about 600 people. Quite a ton of people. Clothes that I didn't, but somebody did.
Thank you, please.
Here. I don't know what did. For years it sat open. So in the summer of '51, it was decided that I would go to the Middle East because there was a need in a hospital there. Dr. Thomas Lambie had started this hospital. He was one of the founders of the Sudan Interior Mission.
Oops, looks like it.
Good night. Oh, there you go.
Broke.
That's all right. It's good if it broke. That was the year I got out of college was when I became a Christian. My life was really changed. and they needed a nurse in the Middle East, so I said, I'll go. Hardly knew where the Middle East was, but that's about right. I went by train from Iowa to Philadelphia, and then I thought, oh, you have to have visas. And I got on this Norwegian freighter. It was called the Emma Baki. And I kept thinking, oh, where are the passengers? What's going on? My ignorance was more than innocence abroad. Oh, you're all so kind. I'm not sure I hope when I was your age I was kind to old women.
Auntie, that was good.
How old were you?
Well, I think, so I went to 22, I think I was 28 when I went.
Were you married?
28 I was when I went over there, so I was 28. Yeah, I was almost.
Wow, incredible.
The very interesting thing were my fellow shipmates. One was an acrobat, an Italian, and he'd come over here to be with the Barnum Bailey Circus, but was headed back to Italy. Another was a tall black Egyptian waiter, and he had come to America to work in the Egyptian embassy, but he had cried, and so he just could not adjust. So they were sending him back to Egypt, and the other two were a mother who was about 65 or 70, and her 40-year-old son, and she treated him like he was her 5-year-old son. And we were the 5 passengers on this Norwegian freighter. This dress is so beautiful, I think. The ladies in the area that we lived in wore these dresses. They got a new one and they got married. They lived in the villages and Bedouin tents. And they did all this handwork without even a pattern. This is the kind of shawl they wore, and they didn't wear the burqas on their. They wore these, and then when they didn't wear it just like this, but then when a man would come, they'd cover their face. Oops, not that much. They'd cover their faces like that. Ta'al Elehu Ya Jamil. Come unto me, all you that are labor and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Here's a keffiyeh. The men knew how to wear them. They'd wear them, and then they have a thing that kind of held them on, but they wore them and they would actually keep the sun and out of their eyes, and then they cover their faces when they were in sand. And then from there we went to Alexandria, and we were there several days. So one of my big experiences there was going with some Egyptians who said they were going to go out to see the pyramids. So it was night, and I asked them if I wanted to go, and I said sure. And they had just one little light bulb hanging over the pyramid. It was before they had exploited or made them really commercial. I like this picture. We flew to Baghdad, and then we stayed right at Ur of the Chaldees. And this was our guide, and he took us out to where the death pits are there. And I looked like I'm being led away to the slaughter. We all laughed at that picture with his gun over his back. A major part of what I did, we did everything again. I had to, Dr. Eleanor Salter and I had to run the hospital. We have about 100 patients, and then we had an outpatient clinic. But we started a little nursing school. So we started taking in students, and I think the classes would be between 6 and 10 people. I made up a syllabus, and I had to take it up to Amman, to the Minister of Health of Jordan. And I went into that office. I went up there by myself. I guess I went on a bus, and we were on the West Bank, and that, of course, was in Amman, on the East Bank of the Jordan. This is one of our nursing classes in our little chapel, and this was at one of our graduations. And this is Eleanor Salto, who came shortly after I got to Jordan. I always like to remind her that I was her senior missionary, although she was the doctor and I was the nurse. And he approved the syllabus, and so then we had this little school. It was 2 years, and we said it was a 2-year diploma in nursing, tuberculosis nursing. And it really flourished, and it was just amazing that it would, because nobody had ever heard of such a degree before. He was our evangelist, and he was our lab technician. And this fellow, when we went back to Jordan in 2000, we went to the little church in Bethlehem, and he is now the pastor of the church in Bethlehem. And he was a student nurse in one of our early classes. Almost all those girls came to know the Lord. And we had a young man from Bethlehem, Bashara, which means good news. And he became a Christian, and he married our secretary, who was also a Christian, and they went to Kuwait and were very active in Christian work in Kuwait. And I've talked to people since who knew them, and they said they're real leaders. But this is the Minister of Health of the country of Jordan. That's King Hussein. Always had to have a picture of the king. There's another picture of all of our staff with the Minister of Health. You can see the terrain was rocky. But that's just one of the many benefits that come by just God's guidance, without way apart from any wisdom.